Dad refused to walk me down the aisle because my sister, aka his fave, insisted that he could only walk one daughter down the aisle, therefore he had to choose. But just a week before my wedding, he showed up at my house in tears begging for a chance. Sister ended up changing her mind and choosing mom's rich new boyfriend over him, scamming him by making him pay for the entire wedding, but this time I refused. Can you imagine spending your entire life feeling invisible to the one person who should have loved you unconditionally? And then, years later, watching that very same person get a brutal, steaming hot dose of karma served up by the very people they cherished most? Because that's my story, and honestly, I've never felt this incredibly satisfied. Pause for effect, a slight shake of the head, a wry smile. I've never considered myself a vindictive person. Not really. But when justice finally arrives, perfectly wrapped, after years of trauma and emotional neglect, you can't help but savor it. My entire childhood, I felt like a ghost around my father. He just didn't see me. And now that everyone else has abandoned him, he suddenly remembers this forgotten daughter he never even liked in the first place. I'm the middle child, you see. I have an older brother, Finn, who's 37, and a younger sister, Sarah, who's 29. For a long time, we looked like a perfectly happy family on the outside. My mom, bless her heart, she tried to be an equal parent. She truly did. But my dad made his favoritism excruciatingly clear. Sarah was his little princess, the apple of his eye. And Finn? Well, Finn was the son, the one he could bond with over man things. Me? I was just there, an afterthought. From a really young age, I remember this gnawing feeling that Dad just didn't like me. I tried everything, tantrums, trying to be good, you name it. Nothing I did ever seemed to grab his attention. So eventually, I just accepted it. Mom, she saw it. She truly saw me, and I love her for that. She'd always go out of her way to make sure I wasn't left out. And Finn, my amazing brother, he saw it too. He saw my neglect, my quiet solitude, and he tried to fill that void. He'd badgered Dad to let me come along when he was teaching him to change a tire or when he was learning to drive. I knew it was Finn, because Dad would never have thought of it himself. It wasn't like I was abused or denied things. We all got similar gifts, the same number of new clothes. But the emotional care? The feeling of being truly loved by my father? That was just missing. Mom and Finn spent years trying to patch that hole in my life. Sarah, on the other hand, she thrived on being the little princess. She was a snobby, entitled kid. Schools tried to raise concerns, but Dad just swept them all under the rug. She grew into an exhausting, entitled young woman. It's why Finn and I are incredibly close, and Finn absolutely cannot stand Sarah. The only person who still doesn't see a problem with her behavior is Dad. Even Mom just barely tolerates her. Fast forward about 10 years ago, Mom and Dad divorced. It was amicable, or so they said, but we kids were never told the real reason. Incompatible, they claimed, but we all knew it was a lie. I don't think it was infidelity. Neither of them dated for ages afterwards. To this day, we don't know the truth. Since we were all adults, there was no custody battle, and they mostly remained civil. I, personally, chose not to visit Dad much. Let's be honest, there was no love lost between us. He never complained about my absence, so it worked for both of us. I mostly spent time with Mom. Finn and Sarah split their time, though Finn and I would coordinate our visits to Mom's, never with Sarah, unless it was a holiday. To an outsider, we probably looked perfectly normal. But inside, things were about to change, and for me, for the better. About 5 years ago, Mom started dating Arthur. He's 60, met Mom at a yoga retreat, and they clicked instantly. Arthur is a genuinely good guy. He's kind to me, never pushes boundaries. He's cordial with Dad, even though Dad gives him endless attitude. I think Dad is just bitter. His own dating life has been a disaster, and now Mom's living a much more luxurious life with Arthur than she ever did with him. We're all happy for Mom, but Dad just seethes. He also hates that we have a good relationship with Arthur. Even though Finn has tried to explain that Arthur isn't replacing him, we're just being sensible adults. It's all so childish and utterly off-putting. Thankfully, I don't deal with much of it because, again, I rarely see him. This background, this strange family dynamic, is crucial for what happened next. A few months ago, my fiancé, Kieran, proposed. We'd been together a long time. I didn't shout it from the rooftops immediately. I value my privacy. But we wanted a short engagement, so we told our families once we'd set the date. The wedding is scheduled for just 1 week from now. The reactions? Mixed to say the least. Mom and Finn were overjoyed. Arthur was thrilled. Dad had a very normal reaction.
Sarah, though?
She looked visibly upset. It was all over video call, and I could see her force a smile before quickly disconnecting. I expected a tantrum from her. She hates not being the center of attention. But I just couldn't deal with her drama at that moment. I called Finn separately, to gossip, and to tell him something incredibly important. I wanted him, not Dad, to walk me down the aisle. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm so touched, but I don't think that's a good idea. Dad will make a huge fuss." I'd love to, but I can't. Not if it means upsetting him and ruining your day. My heart sank. I was hurt. I reminded him that I was asking him because Dad had repeatedly failed me, and Finn had been more of a protective male figure in my life than Dad ever was. It was an emotional conversation. And as much as it hurt to admit, he was right. He gently explained that who walked me down the aisle wasn't as important as having a day free of drama, a day I could look back on happily. He said if he took Dad's place, Dad would be pissy the entire time, ruining my memories. And he was right. Dad was absolutely capable of that stunt. What Finn suggested would make the day easier, if not ideal. He told me to talk to Dad, and I said I'd think about it, though my reluctance was palpable. Then, 2 weeks later, Sarah announced her engagement to her boyfriend, Zach. Kieran and I exchanged a look. I knew she'd try to upstage my wedding somehow. Finn wasn't happy either. We both knew the timing was off, but what could we do? We had to stay quiet. The only silver lining was that her wedding was a month after mine. She had desperately wanted to get married before me, but the stars just didn't align. She was salty about being the second bride and even tried to guilt me into postponing my wedding. I stood firm. I wasn't going to pander to her childish whims. But then, the truly twisted part. Apparently, Dad and Sarah had some pact that he would walk her down the aisle first, before me. How do you even come up with something like that? I guess they just assumed I'd never get married, or get married late, because of my pathetic track record with boys. So, when I did finally ask Dad to walk me down the aisle, this was after Sarah's engagement, he regretfully, almost gleefully, told me he couldn't. He had promised his baby years ago on her deathbed, which, let me be clear, never happened, that he would walk her down the aisle first. He couldn't go back on his word and break her heart. A small, secretive smile. I won't lie. I was ecstatic. Absolutely thrilled. I never wanted him walking me down the aisle anyway. So I put on the most convincing sad, hurt face I could muster. I told him I respected his promise to Sarah, and while it hurt me deeply, it didn't. I would accept it. I immediately called Finn. I told him everything. He was absolutely furious with Dad. If I had known Dad would pull a stunt like that, he raged, I would have jumped at the chance when you asked me the first time. He said if Dad could choose which daughter to grant this privilege, then I could choose too. He was livid. But I was too happy to care. It had all worked out exactly as I had secretly wanted. Things were going well, despite the wedding stress. I was jittery, but everything felt in place until yesterday. Yesterday, unprecedented drama exploded into my life, and I just don't have the stamina for it. Last evening, Sarah informed Dad that he wouldn't be walking her down the aisle. She asked Arthur to do it instead. It was a complete surprise to all of us. She did it over video call, no less. It was brutal. She could have been so much more sensitive. Everyone knew Dad was looking forward to her wedding. He was even paying for all of it because Sarah and Zach wanted to save their money for the honeymoon. Dad had almost completely checked out of my wedding, having no input, no suggestions. All his focus was on Sarah. He hadn't contributed a dime to my wedding. Kieran and I are funding it ourselves. It had gotten so bad that I was relying more on Mom and Arthur's approval for my wedding plans than Dad's. Arthur was actually involved, which is why even Arthur looked taken aback by Sarah's request or demand and didn't know how to respond. He kept glancing at Mom. We were all speechless. Mom, bless her, finally managed to say, Arthur would love to. It was one of the worst calls I've ever attended, and I work in corporate, so bad calls are my staple. By then, Dad was in tears. Instead of talking to Sarah, he started cussing out Arthur and abruptly disconnected the call. That was it. I'm sure the others asked how he was, but I didn't. I had too many other things to worry about, so I promptly exited the call. Plus, this wasn't my issue. It was a promise between Sarah and him. If she broke it, that was between them. I had no intention of intervening. They could sort it out. I had no role to play in their petty family drama. Little did I know it was about to become my issue. To my utter annoyance, Dad called me last night in tears. This was just a few hours after his little princess had delivered that devastating blow. He was sobbing, telling me he was a fool for rejecting my offer to walk me down the aisle. He said he would love to do it for me now. I couldn't believe my ears. The sheer entitlement was shocking. I told him, very gently, that while I was sad for what had happened, a total lie, it was between Sarah and him. It in no way changed my wedding plans. I told him Finn was walking me down the aisle, and that had been decided months ago. I couldn't change it at the last minute. He actually said he would talk to Finn. He declared Finn was just a placeholder for him anyway, and I didn't have to worry about Finn not agreeing. I looked him straight in the eyes, even though it was a phone call. I felt like I was, and told him it wasn't about Finn not agreeing. It was about me not wanting to hurt Finn. And also, I didn't want him to walk me down the aisle in the first place, but he didn't need to know that. He insisted he'd talk to Finn and set things straight. I told him flat out, a swap is not happening. Finn will be walking me down the aisle, and that is final. He was in complete denial. He thought I was resisting because Finn wouldn't step down, and he was confident he could talk Finn out of it. I disconnected the call and called Finn. I told Finn everything. To say he was livid would be an understatement. He asked me what I wanted. I reminded him that I had always wanted him to give me away. He was the first person I'd asked, and it was only at his insistence that I had even considered Dad. He asked again, "Are you sure you want me?" "Yes," I said. "Absolutely." He told me not to worry about anything, that he would set Dad straight. I told him I didn't want any drama at my wedding. Dad needed to be informed that he couldn't just breeze in whenever he liked and use me as a replacement daughter just because his favorite had kicked him to the curb. Finn promised to take care of it. That was last night. I haven't heard from either of them since, and it's been driving me sick. Everything was going so well, and I just don't have the emotional bandwidth for this drama right now. I was nauseous with anxiety, wondering what was happening. Slight shift in tone, more resolute. I finally spoke to Finn. And things were a mess. Even worse than I thought, but thankfully, he had most of it handled. It wasn't going to create problems for me. Finn told me he'd been waiting for Dad to call him about the change in plans. But the call never came. That's when Finn realized Dad wasn't even going to discuss it. He just assumed that because he had decided he would walk me down the aisle, everyone else would just fall in line. After waiting a day, Finn called him. He asked Dad if there was a change of plans, because I'd been saying something different. Dad tried to act all nonchalant, saying I'd asked him to walk me down the aisle now that Sarah wasn't. Now, Finn is usually the diplomatic, sensible, level-headed one among us. So when he told me he went full-on ballistic on Dad, I was genuinely shocked. Finn said he told Dad to cut the crap. He said they both knew I hadn't asked him, that Dad was the one begging for the role because his favorite daughter had kicked him out. Dad, predictably, was furious. He has this habit of reacting viciously when confronted with the truth. But before he could interrupt, Finn told him to shut the hell up for once and listen. He said Dad should be grateful he was even getting an invite to my wedding, given how he'd treated me all these years. Then Finn just tore into him. He apologized to me later for losing his temper, especially so close to my wedding, but he said he just couldn't control himself. He wanted Dad to truly see himself, to drop the facade he was living behind. He laid it all out. He said Dad had always favored Sarah and would at least try with Finn. But I was always just an afterthought, an idiot footnote. And I knew it. Finn reminded him that I had asked him first, that he was my initial choice. He said he had hoped Dad would step up, take the offer, and maybe, just maybe, try to mend our relationship. But Dad blew his chance. Finn told him he was a failure of a father because out of his 3 kids, none of them loved or respected him. Finn didn't respect him because he couldn't be a fair parent. I didn't respect him because he never bothered to love me like a daughter. And even Sarah, funnily enough, didn't respect him because if she did, she wouldn't have pulled the stunt she did. He said Sarah growing into such an entitled, horrible person was Dad's fault because he was the one who pampered and raised her. He said Sarah's personality was Dad's creation, and it served him right that he was discarded by his favorite child, just as he had discarded his own children their entire lives. Finn said there was a lot more, but he couldn't remember most of it. It was all said in a blinding rage. He assured me that after that stern reality check, Dad wouldn't pull any stunts. If he did, Finn would set him straight right there. And there was absolutely no change in plans. He would be walking me down the aisle, and he wouldn't change it for the world. He apologized for the ruckus, especially right before the wedding. But I was more thankful than I had ever been in my life. I had never had the strength to take that kind of stand for myself. I always thought maybe Dad didn't love me because there was something wrong with me. I tried to outgrow that feeling, but I never truly could. And here was my brother, taking this fierce stand for me, something I had never expected anyone to do. My mother, when we were kids, she tried to make up for the lack of affection, but she never truly stood up for me. I don't blame her, but her deference to Dad always made me feel like I'd never get to tell him how horrible he was being. But that had changed. And it had changed because my brother loved me so much he couldn't bear it anymore. By the time he finished, tears were streaming down my face. I choked out that it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever done for me. I don't think Finn realizes the magnitude of what he did. It was the best thing I could have ever asked for. A brighter, more triumphant tone. So, I'm now a married woman. I actually got married a few days ago, and Kieran and I are currently enjoying our honeymoon in Thailand. The wedding went without a hitch, though there was still some drama beforehand. With Finn not backing down, and Dad not being able to walk either daughter down the aisle, things had gotten pretty serious. Dad's main concern was how the extended family would view him if he was missing from both his kids' weddings. That was his constant refrain when Finn, and he had another chat. Finn told him point blank that, for my wedding, he was missing out because he'd been emotionally checked out with me anyway, and he should be grateful he was even invited. As for Sarah, nobody really knew why she did what she did, and he could only ask himself what went wrong with his favorite. Word got around to Sarah, and she had the absolute audacity to call me. She said I needed to have Dad walk me down the aisle since she couldn't, and it was unfair to him. I told her, straight up, to eat dirt. She was funding her wedding with Dad's money, and then kicked him out. I reminded her I had gone to Dad, and he had chosen to walk her down the aisle first, based on some stupid promise she couldn't even honor. And if she was so hurt that her dear old daddy was miserable, she was more than welcome to switch things back up at her wedding. I even said I was sure Arthur would understand, and I could talk to him for her since she was feeling so bad. She didn't have much to say to that, and cut the call. I called Finn, told him I didn't want any more dad drama before the wedding. It was his responsibility to ensure none of it reached me. I was done. I had 100 other things to worry or be excited about. I couldn't let Dad ruin this day, too. He'd already made me miserable for most of my life. I wouldn't let him take away the most special day of it. Finn, my rock, told me not to worry, that he would take care of everything. To say I was a bundle of nerves on my wedding day would be an understatement, but thankfully, everything was under control. Dad looked incredibly sullen, but he didn't try to start anything, so I'm grateful for that. And frankly, after a point, I was too busy enjoying myself to even care about his pouty face. Sarah tried to stay as far away from Dad as possible. It was incredibly awkward between them. But I didn't care. The wedding went without a hitch. And when Finn walked me down the aisle, I could feel Dad glaring daggers at my back. But that was all he could do. I've been told a couple of people asked why Finn was up there and not Dad. And now Dad has been left to do some serious damage control. But you know what? That's his cross to bear. I just want to be done with Sarah's wedding, too, so there's no more drama. I'm going low contact with Dad for the foreseeable future. I really don't see the point anymore. A final, triumphant, satisfied look. Sarah got married yesterday. I wouldn't know how it went because she uninvited both Kieran and me from the wedding. I don't know what she thought that would achieve, but I was more than happy to sit it out. To her dismay, even Finn didn't go. So it was only Mom, Arthur, and Dad there. Dad was apparently still holding out hope that she'd change her mind at the last minute and have him walk her down the aisle. But that never happened. Mom said it was uncomfortable as hell, and from the photos Sarah posted, it's clear Arthur would rather have been anywhere else. Dad is sullen, Arthur is uncomfortable, and Mom is just done. Other than that, she's fine. Her wedding went well too, not that I care. Mom called me to give me these details. Dad is miserable, naturally. He had been holding out hope that at least one of us would eventually succumb and let him do what he wanted. But now, all three of his kids are practically estranged from him. His personal life is a mess. He's not taking it well. And honestly, I couldn't care less. I truly feel it serves him right. For being such a shitty father to me. For giving me a horrible childhood. And not just that, for actively contributing to it. Narrator leans forward slightly. A genuine, warm smile. So, I have to ask, have you ever faced something like this? Have you ever had to stand up to a parent who just wouldn't truly see you? Or maybe, have you ever witnessed karma being served up so perfectly? Tell me what you think, down in the comments below. I really want to know.